All right, let's decode some secret messages. We're diving deep into ornament cues today, and I think this is going to seriously change how you see all your relationships. We'll be looking at this source, ornaments, attractors, and allergies. And we'll discover how even tiny choices in our looks and behavior can actually speak volumes.
Yeah, it's amazing how much they can communicate.
Okay, so before we go any further, can we break this down a little?
Yeah.
What exactly are these ornament cues, and why should we even care about them?
So think of ornament cues as like these subtle details that boost communication beyond just like spoken words. Like if you were adding an exclamation point or a question mark to like your message, except we're doing this with our bodies, our clothes, even our hairstyles.
Interesting. So it's not just about looking good. It's about sending out these signals that
Yeah.
can really attract or repel people.
Exactly. And the really cool part is our brains are actually wired to respond to these cues, often without us even realizing it. That's where the idea of attractors and allergies comes into play.
Okay. I'm intrigued, but also a little scared. Can we talk about those a bit more? They sound kind of intense.
Yeah. So like imagine you meet someone new and they're giving off all these positive signals. They have a nice warm smile, they make good eye contact, and their style just vibes with yours. These are attractors. They trigger this like good feeling in your brain that makes you feel drawn to them.
Like they're speaking our language without saying anything.
Exactly. But then there's the flip side. What if that same person you meet has bad hygiene or they keep cutting you off? Those are allergies, and they can make you feel uncomfortable or even like grossed out, which might be a sign you two aren't compatible.
It's almost like our brains are judging people in the background, trying to see if someone's a friend or an enemy.
Kind of. Our brains are amazing at picking up on subtle social cues. And these ornament cues are a big part of that, like having a radar for seeing who we get along with.
Wow, this is making me super aware of my own ornament cues. Okay, so we know our brains react to these signals, but how much of this is intentional and how much is just our instincts?
Well, it's really interesting. It's a mix of both. Some ornament cues are totally on purpose, like when you wear a wedding ring to show you're committed,
Right.
or when you wear a power suit for a big presentation. But then a lot of those cues are actually subconscious. They're these expressions of our personality, our values, even how we're feeling at that moment. Like someone who is feeling anxious, they might fidget a lot or avoid eye contact, even if they don't realize it.
That totally makes sense. So how can we become more aware of all this for ourselves and for other people?
It starts with observation. Just pay attention to how people present themselves, not just their clothes, but also their posture, their hand gestures, even their tone of voice. Oh, and don't forget about the context of everything, because the same ornament cue can mean different things depending on the situation and the people involved.
So it's like we become these detectives of subtle signals, learning to read between the lines of how people are acting.
I like that.
So this all has me thinking about compatibility. How do ornament cues play out in romantic relationships? I'm guessing it's not just about making a good first impression.
You're right, it's so much more. Ornament cues can be super important for building healthy relationships that last. It's about making a sense of harmony, like visually and emotionally.
Okay, I'm dying to know more. How can we use all of this to improve our relationships?
Well, for one thing, you have to pay attention to the cues that your partner's giving off, both the ones they mean to send and the ones they don't. Like, what's their style saying? How do they react to your ornament cues? Do you notice any patterns or changes that might point to something deeper?
So it's about being really observant,
Mm.
almost like learning a whole new love language. But this time it's all based on these little signals.
Exactly. And it's not just about figuring out their cues. It's also about choosing your cues carefully. Remember the early days of your relationship. You put so much effort into how you looked, the gifts you gave, the little things you did to make your partner feel special. How can you bring those back into your lives now, even in small ways?
That's such a great point. I think it's easy to get comfortable in relationships and forget about the small things that make a big difference. But how do we do that without being fake?
That's where communication comes in. Talk to your partner. Tell them what you find attractive and what makes you feel loved and appreciated. Maybe it's a certain outfit or a perfume they wear, or even just the way they look at you. By sharing that, you can build this really positive feedback loop, making each other feel good and connecting on a deeper level.
This is making me see how much we communicate without realizing it. But what about those times when our ornament cues clash or even cause problems? How do we deal with those tough situations?
Yeah, that's when open and honest communication is even more important. If you notice your partner's ornament cues have changed, or something feels off, don't be afraid to ask them about it. Maybe they're going through some personal changes, or maybe there's something they need to talk about.
So it's not about judging them. but being curious and understanding.
Exactly. Remember, these cues are often unconscious expressions of what's going on inside. By creating a safe space to talk, you can turn these differences into opportunities for growth. Sometimes all it takes is acknowledging your partner's effort and asking them to explain things a little more, and that can help clear up so many misunderstandings.
This is making me think about those
Yeah.
times when we might accidentally give off allergy cues to our partner. Are there any common traps we should watch out for?
Oh, totally. One of the biggest mistakes is forgetting to take care of ourselves. When we're stressed or tired or feeling down, it can show up in how we look and act, even if we don't notice it. We might slouch, wear clothes that don't look good on us, or forget about basic grooming. These can accidentally send the message that we don't care or that we're not approachable, and that can push people away in a relationship.
So taking care of ourselves is not just about vanity, it's also about sending a positive message to our partner.
Exactly. When you take the time to care for yourself, it shows your partner that you value yourself and that you care about your relationship. It's like saying, I want to be my best for you.
That makes a lot of sense. But what about those deeper allergies, like those clashes in values or lifestyles that can cause problems? How do we handle those?
Those can be tricky. Sometimes those conflicts come from differences in personalities or what we think is important. And you might need to do some serious thinking and be willing to compromise.
Can you give us an example? I'm trying to see how this would work in real life.
Okay, imagine one partner is really into fitness and healthy eating, and the other partner is more of a couch potato who loves junk food. Those different lifestyles can create a lot of tension, especially when it comes to things you do together and what you eat. The fitness enthusiast might start giving off those allergy cues when their partner orders pizza 3 nights in a row, while the couch potato might feel judged when their partner's always trying to get them to change.
That does sound like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
So how do we avoid falling into those traps?
Communication is key. But it's also about finding ways to compromise. Maybe the fitness enthusiast can suggest trying a new healthy recipe together. Or the couch potato can agree to go for walks a few times a week. It's about finding those small compromises that show you respect each other and that you're willing to meet each other's needs.
So it's not about trying to change each other, but about finding ways to bridge the gap.
Exactly. It's about building a shared vision for the relationship where you both feel good about it.
This is really making me think about how much thought goes into building a good relationship. It's not just about finding someone you're attracted to, but also about creating a future together where you both feel happy and fulfilled.
Absolutely. And those little choices we make in how we look and act can have a surprisingly big impact. By being intentional with our ornament cues, we can
Right.
send these powerful messages about who we are, what we value, and how we want to connect with the world, both as individuals and as a couple.
This has been so eye-opening. I feel like I'm seeing my own relationship in a totally new light. But before we move on to part 3, where we'll get into even more real-life examples, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Mhm.
So we've been talking about how powerful these ornament cues are.
Yeah.
But is there ever a time when we need to be careful about reading into them too much? I mean, could these signals be misleading?
Oh, that's a really good point. And yeah, it's super important to remember that ornament cues are just one piece of the whole picture. Don't base everything on just them.
Right. So we need to think critically and consider all the evidence.
Absolutely. Think about it this way. You see someone all dressed up in a designer suit with a fancy watch. You might think, wow, this person's successful and confident. But what if they're actually struggling financially? Or what if they're really insecure deep down?
Yeah, it's like those cues are a mask, not the real them.
Exactly. So while it's good to notice ornament cues, we also need to pay attention to other things, like what they say, how they act,
Yeah.
and the whole situation.
So it's about being perceptive, but not jumping to conclusions based only on how someone looks.
Right on.
Remember, people are complicated. Ornament cues can be helpful, but they don't tell us everything.
What about those times when we might misunderstand someone's cues because of cultural differences?
Oh yeah, that's a big one. Something that's seen as polite or attractive in one culture could be totally rude or offensive in another. Like in some cultures, making eye contact is a way to show respect, but in other cultures, it could come across as aggressive.
So how do we avoid those kinds of misunderstandings
Yeah.
and make sure we're reading the cues correctly?
It comes down to being aware and sensitive to other cultures. The more we learn about different customs and traditions, the better we'll be at understanding each other. And when in doubt, just ask.
That makes sense. So this has been an awesome deep dive. We've covered a lot, from the science behind ornament cues to some of the tricks. But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with some things they can start doing today to use these cues in their own lives. What are your top tips? Well, first, prioritize self-care. When you feel good about yourself, it shows, and it sends a positive message to everyone around you. Second, really pay attention to the cues your partner's giving off. Try to decode their clothing choices and see if you can get a sense of their mood or what they might want. Third, talk. Tell your partner what you find attractive and what makes you feel loved. And lastly, be mindful of cultural differences. Be curious and respectful in every interaction.
I love those tips. And listeners, remember, this is just the start of your journey into this amazing world of ornament cues. Ornaments, attractors, and allergies is full of great information. And there's tons of other stuff out there too, books, articles, even online courses,
Yeah.
all to help you learn even more
Yeah.
and really master this powerful way of communicating.
Yeah, it's a lifelong journey of observing, trying things out, and understanding yourself better, but it's so worth it.
Absolutely. By using these ornament cues, we can build better relationships, navigate social situations more confidently, and just live more authentic and meaningful lives.
Totally agree.
Well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
We'll be back next time with another exciting exploration into the world of human behavior.
Until then, keep those ornament cues flowing.
This has been so helpful, but I gotta ask, how does this whole idea of ornament cues fit in with personal branding? I thought branding was more about your work image, not really about romantic relationships.
That's a really interesting question. And yeah, you're right. Personal branding is often linked to the business world,
Yeah.
but it's actually way bigger than that. It applies to like every part of our lives, including our relationships.
Okay, tell me more.
So your personal brand is basically the image you project to everyone. It's a mix of your values, your style, how you act, and your overall vibe. And in a relationship, your personal brand gets all mixed up with your partner's brand, creating this shared image that shows what you both value as a couple.
So it's not about trying to be someone we're not, but more about making sure our individual brands work well with our partners to create something more authentic together.
Exactly. Imagine a couple who are both super passionate about social justice. They might decide to buy clothes from ethical brands, volunteer for causes they care about, and even decorate their home with art that reflects their beliefs. These choices aren't just random, they're about building a shared brand that shows who they are as a couple.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like their ornament cues are telling a story about what they believe in and how they want to make a difference.
Exactly. And this idea of a shared brand can be super powerful for making a couple feel more connected and like they have a purpose. It's about building a world together that shows your values and hopes as a couple.
This makes me realize that there's a lot more to relationships than we think. It's not just about being attracted to someone, it's also about making a plan for your future together. That works for both of you individually and as a couple.
You got it. And those little choices we make in how we present ourselves can really make a difference. By being thoughtful about our ornament cues, we can show the world who we are, what matters to us, and how we want to connect with others, both on our own and as a couple.
This has been so eye-opening. You mentioned that this concept of ornament cues connects to some bigger ideas in psychology and sociology. Can you tell us a bit more about that? I'm curious how it all fits into the bigger picture.
Absolutely. It's fascinating how these seemingly small choices in how we look and act can actually tap into some really deep-seated human tendencies and social dynamics. For example, how we present ourselves can be seen as a kind of social exchange, like we're signaling our worth to potential partners.
So it's like saying, hey, this is what I bring to the table through our clothes, our grooming, and how we carry ourselves.
You got it. And this relates to the idea of symbolic interactionism, which basically says that we create meaning through our interactions with each other. Our ornament cues act like symbols, giving information about who we are, our social status, and what we're all about. We're constantly reading each other's symbols and changing our behavior based on what we see.
It's like we're all in this big, intricate dance of symbols, trying to figure out where we belong and how to connect.
I like that. And this dance is influenced by tons of things, like our culture, our past experiences, and even our attachment style. For example, someone with a secure attachment style might feel more comfortable expressing themselves through their ornament cues, while someone with an anxious attachment style might be more worried about getting approval from their partner.
Wow, this is incredible. It's amazing how all these different ideas connect. It's like we're unraveling this huge tapestry of human behavior.
Exactly. And the more we understand these things, the more we can make conscious choices about how we present ourselves to the world and how we handle our relationships. We can actually use ornament cues as tools for connection, understanding, and personal growth.
This has been mind-blowing. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of myself
Huh?
and my relationships. So to wrap up this deep dive into the world of ornament cues, I want to remind everyone that this is just the beginning. Ornaments, Attractors, and Allergies is a fantastic resource. And there are so many other books, articles, and online courses to help you learn even more and really master this powerful form of communication.
It's a journey of self-discovery that never really ends.
That's so true. By understanding and using ornament cues, we can create stronger, more fulfilling relationships, feel more confident in social situations, and ultimately live more authentic and meaningful lives.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this amazing journey. We'll see you next time for another exciting deep dive into human behavior.
Until then, keep those ornament